Awesome.
Can you hear us?
Man, I can hear you great. I can hear you
Okay,
great.
great.
I can
we
hear
were
you
trying
great.
to go live. We had it on the computer trying to go live. And they weren't even wasn't an option to
Oh,
go live
okay,
on the computer
okay.
to join, so I had to pick up my phone.
That's what I'm talking about. See, that's what I'm talking. Game changers. We think, man. You got to be thinking. That's what I'm talking about. So, family, you know, I want to introduce yourself. Want you guys to introduce yourselves. I do know that you are a part of my Tantra family. You are graduates and also certified sexologists and certified coaches to not just bring a not just bring a theory, but to bring an actual application to the information in which we're talking about. You all also have a successful retreat and a teaching curriculum and center where you're inviting couples and inviting people out all throughout the year to learn more and to develop in connection, to develop in love, to have great love lives. But you all are also from the church. And so when we sat down and had the wonderful time that we got a chance to spend together, it was almost, you know, we were having a little family reunion. When we got a chance to do that, we talked about this. And not only talked about this, but we talked about a series of things in which we'll be doing in the future. And so tonight, we're here to talk about Why is the Church So Horny Part 2. But before we do that, I want you two to introduce yourselves, and then let's get started.
All right.
I'm Karen Craig.
And I'm Brian Craig. We live here in Atlanta, hot Atlanta. Not really hot right now, but hot Atlanta.
Cold Atlanta.
And yeah, I don't know how deep you want us to go on our introductions, but we're
just tell, you know, let it all out.
all right.
Married, a couple.
Yeah. Yes.
We have 5 kids between us.
Yes.
Who are all college age at
Yes.
this point. We are trained in and certified in authentic Tantra, as you know.
Yes.
We're also certified sexologists. So those are all the things we've studied. I've studied reflexology, Ho'oponopono. I don't know if you're familiar with that. NVC, which is nonviolent communication.
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah. And both of us have taught Bible study and
yes, yes.
have backgrounds in the church and
yes,
in the Bible and all of those things.
Yes. You know, and you know, well, let's just go ahead and get this conversation started. Hey guys, as you come in, like and share. That's my request to you. There's someone that needs to hear what we have to say. And listen, guys, here's what I want to express to you tonight. As we're talking as we're having this conversation tonight, if there's any anger, if there's any resistance that comes up, breathe for a moment, take a breath, but listen to what we're saying. Because 9 times out of 10, what's really happening is that there is some type of blockage that has been really affecting and infecting your life that is trying to be released, that is trying to actually be broken through. And so though you may feel offended, you may have to cut this off now and come back later, but listen to this. If you hear me, type I hear you, because I want to make sure you hear me. I want you to like and share this, please. If you hear me, type I hear you, because I just made a wonderful statement and point there. Whenever there's unexplainable emotion, whenever the anger comes up or any type of emotion that cannot be explained, that's an emotional block. And that emotional block most times is blocking us from our best selves. And so if you cannot digest this right now, thank you, David. If you cannot digest this right now, then come back and watch it later. But I want you to watch the conclusion of the whole thing. All right. So Brian, Karen, as we get into this discussion, I wanted to, thank you. Please continue to like and share. I wanted to talk about how the church's response, first of all, I want to talk about how there's been so many scandals concerning sex, concerning sexuality. We find that, you know, a lot of our brothers are on the DL. We have, you know, promiscuity going on in the world, but more so in the church, which we are a part of. But what I've recognized is, as you and I have talked about it, there has not been a real education in the church when it comes to sexuality. And I don't know about you, but I believe that I serve a God, that I operate with this force, this power, this essence, this beingness in which we call God. And I believe that this force, essence, power wants me to have the best money, the best look, the best sex life, the best communication. I'm just a believer of that. But this is what has happened in the church. The church says, when people ask, well, what about sex? They say, well, don't ask that question. Then you go back and they say, now what about sex? They'll say, well, when you get married, you'll figure it out. Well, what about sex? Just don't be gay. You know, they never ask the question. They never answer the question. I'm serious. I mean, they never answer the questions that we are asking. And so let's talk about the churches, how the church has responded and the lack thereof, and what we need to do in order to have a healthy communion with our sexuality, which will also allow us to have a healthy communion with this divine presence, essence, beingness in which we call God.
All right.
Well, I think that the church is suffering, just as much of the rest of the population, the world is suffering, but the church is suffering, and it's really for a lack of knowledge. A lack of knowledge about our bodies, a lack of knowledge about sexuality and how our bodies work. So there's very little sex education. You know, we like to ask the question, when did you last have a sex ed class? And often it was like 7th grade, you know, or somewhere. I even asked my daughter at one point, what did you learn in your last sex ed class? And she said, well, mostly just how not to get an STD.
How not to get pregnant, right.
and not to get pregnant, right. But there's so much more to it. So, for example, a lot of people don't know in the church and outside of the church that women have 5 erectile beds of tissue.
Yes.
So all of those need to become engorged. In other words, in order for a woman to have full sexual pleasure and full arousal. And that can take from 25 to 45 minutes.
Yes.
And so what happens if a man and a woman aren't in sync, then the man's finished before the woman is even fully engorged, is fully aroused and ready for penetration and ready to orgasm and those sorts of things. People don't know that women have the capacity for like up to or more than 11 forms of orgasm.
Yes.
Men don't know their own body. So a lot of it is just basic fundamental knowledge about our bodies and how they work sexually.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just kind of the piggyback. It's so true, and talked about, you know, just even the clitoris, the structure. There's no other organ that's made. That organ is made just for pleasure. That's the only purpose is. So we were created for pleasure. We were created to enjoy it. But like you said, because there's no instructions, there are no instructions for our bodies and how we created besides those 8th grade classes that said don't get pregnant, don't have sex. Then no one knows about their body. They're grown women. They're grown men that don't know that the clitoris is not this little thing right here, that it's a whole structure.
Right.
You know? And so no one knows that. And so, and the topic of sex is taboo. In most churches, it's no one knows, and you don't talk about it. You just hear the bed is undefended, which means that you don't talk about what goes on. It talks to you about it. So it's, you know, there are a lot of unhealthy a lot of scandals, a lot of people doing things, you know, outside, and people. It's because our sexual nature being just subdued, and it's not being addressed. And even in a marriage, we're not talking about. I'm not even talking about.
We're not talking about.
We're not talking about
in a marriage.
Talking about in a marriage. You know that is being unhappy, and where do you go? Because really.
Pornography,
Men typically sneak and that on their wife, but porn is not sex education.
Porn
Porn is
isn't
not.
Yeah.
even sex. It's acting.
It didn't even, it's acting. It's, you know, and
Right.
Davey and I said that the other week, it's absolutely acting. And that's the thing that we need to understand. We cannot get information or learn, but most times when we don't, but one of the things that I can do is that I can give credence to people wanting to know. But here's the problem. They want to know in secret. See, why is my whole issue is that the church should be the forerunner of this information. The church should be the school, the university, to show us about sexuality. So when it's mentioned, it isn't something foreign or something taboo or something that we need to, oh, no, shh, don't talk about that. I just did it, but don't talk about it. You know, I feel like the church should be, you know, ahead of the game. Let's talk about something that the both of you just talked about, because I believe that many men and women get into relationships with persons, and people are married to people that are damaged, and because they are damaged, they don't really know the they don't really know the severity of laying down with a person that's damaged. You know, the church used to talk about, you know, don't have sex before you're married because a spirit may jump on you. But really, and that's for a lack of terms, but really you can be in a marriage and someone's damage and pain and trauma and neglect and psychotic mentalities and energy can actually fall on you. Let's talk about that. The benefits, I mean, well, the not the benefits, but the damage of being sexually active with a damaged person.
So everybody, to some degree, has experienced some level of trauma. So there are a lot of people in the church, for example, both women and men, who've been the victim of some form of sexual abuse, which of course is traumatizing, whether it was by a stranger, whether it was by a neighbor, a family member. And then there are more benign forms of trauma, but that traumatize people nevertheless. It could be teased when they were a child. It could be they were caught, you know, touching themselves, and their parents got upset, and so they built a wall of shame around that.
Right.
So there's all sorts of damage, but to some degree everyone is. So what we like to teach is how to work with that damage, how to those injuries, and that shame and those sorts of things. So there are ways that we teach that, you know, and as you know from authentic Tantra, that help to work through those, what become blockages.
Right.
And what becomes really areas like trauma is really just energy or experiences or emotional experiences that are unresolved.
Right.
And so then have taken up residence in our souls and in our emotions, in our bodies. So I mean, I agree with you. Like, we don't need to be coming together with people who are clearly toxic.
Right.
But everybody, husbands and wives, they need to know how to heal themselves of those traumas and heal one another. So
Right.
there are means of working with the breath, the certain massage techniques, all of those sorts of things that help us to learn how to heal one another and affirm one another and work through those blocks.
Right.
Exactly. Very good. Very well put. And, you know, in addition to that, it's like we aren't given the tools to heal ourselves. You know, we always say when we talk to people and we coach people is that there really isn't a thing of working on a relationship. It's working on the self. So what happens is we come into a relationship and we're broken. All of us have some sort of trauma. I don't care how small or big it is. It could be from bullying to sexual abuse. And we don't deal with it. You know, as men, we're told to man up, suck it up. You know,
right.
Woman, and we suffer in silence.
Yeah, suffer in silence. Don't share that. We don't talk about that stuff. So you have broken people that are coming together instead of two whole people coming together. And what's happening is we get together and we say, Jesus is going to fix it.
Right.
I can tell you from experience, Jesus is not going to fix it.
Right.
He's not going to fix it.
Because he made us responsible to fix it. We're supposed to be solving those problems. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So we sit back. Most people sit back and they feel like I'm going to pray about it. But the prayer is for you. The prayer really, 99.9% of the time, is for you to your baby is for you to do the work on yourself. And that's the issue,
Yes.
is that we're waiting for someone to save us, and we have to really look in the mirror and say, in this situation, you are my savior. I have to save myself. I have to work on myself. I have to work on my issue. I have to work on my trauma. You know, this did happen to me as a child, and I had to deal with it, but we're not given the tools to deal with it. Especially,
Yeah.
and usually a blockage anywhere is a blockage everywhere. So when you have a blockage in one area
Everywhere.
of your body, yeah, in one area of your system, then sexuality is going to be blocked. Finances are going to be blocked.
Mm-hmm.
Your relationship with your kids are going to be blocked. Your relationship with the coworkers is going to be blocked. So what we do with, the Tantra is that, we do give tools to help remove blockages. So there's a flow of love,
Yeah.
flow of energy, flow
Yeah.
of understanding, given
Yeah.
tools to
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
communicate,
flow of healing.
whole flow of healing, given
Yeah.
tools to communicate
Yeah.
my needs and wants to my wife, so that, she can meet those needs and wants. So
Yeah.
it's the tools aren't given.
Yeah. See, and that's very powerful because in teaching, according to Scripture, Christ is within us. And there's a divine nature within each and every one of us. And the truth of the
Right.
matter is, many of us cannot get to that divine nature. The scripture says that the kingdom of God is not over here, is not over there, is not with observation, but the kingdom of God is within. And most of us cannot get to the manifold blessings or the most infinite parts of ourselves, the most infinite parts of our thinking. They're mental blocks, they're emotional blocks, they're sensual blocks, they're financial blocks, they're all of these blocks, but the blocks are from within, and they are
Yes.
blocking the kingdom that's within us from actually operating and manifesting and functioning on the level that it's supposed to function. We're supposed
Right.
to be game changers. We're supposed to be optimal thinkers. We're supposed to be movers and shakers, but many of us cannot do that because of those blockages. Can you share with us how blockages show up? We know how they do, but share with us how they show up, because many people may be listening right now, and they may be experiencing blockages on the day-to-day basis, on the minute-to-minute basis, and they don't know how it's showing up. Share with us how blockages show up, how people can tell if they have a block or not.
Well, anything that feels restrictive, like anything where you're like this, that's a block.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're supposed to be expansive, like our hearts are supposed to be open.
Mm-hmm.
So in any area where you're feeling like this, that's like a fear response, that's a constricted place. So you know that that's a block. I mean, think
Mm-hmm.
about blocking is like this. So
Yes.
anything that you're responding to in that way, I mean, it's called a block for a reason. Like it's literally,
It's literally,
to
yeah.
keep
Yeah.
something, yes, to keep something back, to not think about it, not
Yeah.
address it, not touch it. And it shows up in our bodies a lot of times as like what we think of as physical ailments, but
Mm-hmm.
it can be, stiffness in the neck. It can be
Wow.
pain in your back. It can be in your
Wow.
lower back.
Mm-hmm.
Even in your genitals. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people will go and get a massage because they know that their tissues, and their muscles are tight, but that tightness shows up in other areas of our bodies as
Yes.
well, including our genitals.
Right.
Yes.
And in fact, for women and especially and people who sit a lot, that kind of energy, it's not flowing
Right.
in those areas. So some of it's physical, like literally the blood supply, the blood isn't circulating,
Mm-hmm.
the nervous system, the nerves are actually like you're sitting on them all day.
Yeah.
So some of it is just learning about our bodies and how to move those blocks in our bodies. But as Brian said, in terms of communicating with one another, you can help move that energy
Yeah.
through breath work.
Yes.
And understanding, for example, how our nervous system works, our vagus nerve, which is,
Mm-hmm.
helps to control the autonomic system, which is that whole fight or flight,
Right.
and how to actually stimulate that nerve, which runs through our entire body, from the head to our pelvis, so that
Yes.
we can actually just breath work.
Yes.
According to the Bible, God breathed breath into us, and that's what
Yes.
gave us life. So
Yes.
just taking in that breath and learning how to use it so that it moves blocks.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. You know, one of the listeners, actually a friend of ours, she said, we are sick as our secrets. And that's really, you know, we really are. You know, our secrets are sick, but then we can tuck it away and then we'll be okay. But it doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go away.
Yeah, it doesn't go away. And, you know, our society, you know, I believe we are fearfully and wonderfully made. I believe we are made in the image of our creator, whatever anyone wants to call that. But I believe that our society has created a system that does is counter to us living authentically, living a wholesome life, from our food to our environment, to our jobs, to our, you know,
we really are living beneath our privilege.
Yeah, we're living beneath our privilege. So I don't believe that we're supposed to have all these blockages that we do have. I believe that we're trained. It's called
the domestication.
The domestication.
Psyops.
You know? Yeah. And so we're trained to be a certain way, but we're living literally in a system that's too small for us.
Right.
You know, there was a time when we did create great things, where there were, you know, different structures and pyramids and things that we created from our brain, and no one can figure it out. Not even the best, whoever it is, they can't figure out how it's done.
Right.
So we're living beneath our means. We're living beneath who we are, who we're created to be. And it's time that we learn who we are, especially around the topic of sexuality, which is a powerful, powerful force, you know, that we have.
And there's no difference between our sexuality, our sexual being, our sexual energy, and our spirit being, and our spiritual energy.
It's all one and the same. It's all one and the same.
So that separation is not God created. That separation between the sacred and the sexual, that's not God created. It's all one energy.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I can liken it to someone, a Ferrari. You know, it's like I say, you have this Ferrari that can go over 200 and something miles an hour, but saying you're limited to going 10 miles an hour. You're created for greatness. You're created for something spectacular, and you're told to separate that. You're told to take the engine out of the Ferrari and put a Volkswagen engine in it. You know what I mean? And so, like, we are created for greatness. And so being told to separate our spirituality from our sexuality has crippled us as a society, as an individual, as a couple. It's
as the church.
As the church.
It's called a separation because it's fear around it. And you can't have love and fear in the same space. It's literally two different vibrations. So anyone that leads with fear, they're not operating in love. It's virtually impossible to operate in love and operate in fear. The opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. So if they can instill that fear, anyone, I'm not saying this is, you know, just around the church or Christianity. This is not bashing the church. It's
right. No.
It's about us owning our power. So, you know, if they can give, you know, have you fearing whatever it is. The news is created for us to live in a state of fear because it's crippling, and then we can't operate in love because of fear of my neighbor. Guess what? I can't love my neighbor.
Because I'm scared of them.
It's impossible. It's not possible to love and fear at the same time, in the same space, in the same body, on the same vibration. It's different. It's completely different. So we have to know how to operate in love, how to use the tools that we're given. That was given by our creator. This is not something that's anti-God or anti-church. It's pro.
This is pro.
We're created to be.
Yes.
We're created for pleasure. You know, if we weren't created for pleasure, guess what? Sex wouldn't be good.
You know, and the scripture says that. It says that God is a God of pleasure. Amidst of many definitions that it has of God, one of the things I did see in there was God. God is a God of pleasure. And I looked for it very thoroughly because I kept hearing people say all of these things like this lust spirit and this sex demon and this and that. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, what you're trying to do is that you're trying to suppress something that is actually a part of your nature. And instead of trying to suppress it, I think what we should have been trying to do is educate ourselves on it, so that we will know how to taper it. If we're not going to have sex before marriage, okay, then let's learn how to taper this and control it. Because watch this, people don't understand this, Brian and Karen, and you understand this. When we learn how to master this energy, the sexual energy, which is the masculine and the feminine energy coming together as a force, which is now a creative force. When we learn
Right.
how to understand that, and when we learn how to master that, it begins to create in our lives. I remember when my wife and I, when we were younger in our marriage, and we used to have makeup sex. And what makeup sex is when you get angry and then you try to have sex so you won't be angry anymore. Well, here's what I recognize, and I started to recognize it earlier before I even got into Tantra. I recognized that once we had the angry makeup sex, then once we got in the shower, we were arguing again. I was like, will you pass the soap? Well, it's right there. We started fussing and fighting again, because the truth of the matter is, when we were angry, still angry, we took that consciousness into that creative process, and all the creative process did was accelerate it. It magnified it. It made it bigger. And so now we're arguing. We were trying to get over arguing. I thought I did my good work, and she thought she did put her best moves on, but it didn't work because we did not. We, y'all know I'm a comedian. I don't know what y'all.
But that's operating with. Go ahead. I didn't know. Finish your story.
That's operating it, but that's operating with a lack of knowledge, and that's also operating out of fear. Out of fear.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's also taking an angry energy into sex,
into it.
what's supposed to be a divine union.
Yes.
And
yes.
so one of the things that we teach is like breathing exercises that actually harmonize us. So so we're on the same page. And
now that's holy.
And you think, oh, affirmations are just something you just say, but it's like when you're doing it in a real way, and you precede your sexual union with those kinds of exercises where you're actually like alternating your breath, so that you're literally entraining or harmonizing and synchronizing your nervous system.
Together,
so when
to where your brain waves will be the same, your breathing will be the same. Exactly. When it talks about becoming one, this is the practice.
One. Like you're moving and breathing as one. And then you move into that space of sexual union with that, and then also learning how to be on the same page. Like they're tools that men are taught so that they're actually separating the ejaculation from the orgasm, so they can be multi-orgasmic, which gives them the opportunity to extend and expand their sexual experience, so that
to support
they're harmonized with
that
their
kind of
bodies.
Exactly.
As we talked about earlier in the segment, if a woman takes 25 to 45 minutes for her to be fully aroused, and the man is done, then the couple is going to be unsatisfied and suffering.
Yes.
Not just horny, but suffering.
Right. And then you're really going to be talking about, pass the soap. You pass the soap. You're going to have some.
And the thing is that, go ahead.
So, and it's going to touch, I think it's going to touch into what you're about to talk about. So really what we're talking about, and this was my next point, the benefit of saving yourself until you get all of the information about sex, and until you actually find a lover that is healing. There's a benefit in that.
Yeah, there absolutely is benefit in it. And you don't have to indulge to know if someone's working on themselves. You can have these conversations.
I know that's right.
You can have these conversations.
See, and the way I'm set up, really, I mean, I'm married, but the way I'm set up is like, I don't even, when you walk into this level of spirituality, and sexuality becomes a spirituality and becomes sacred, and it becomes healing. And I've seen so many of my childhood baggages and traumas and pains come up, and my wife's, and when you begin to do that, you're very selective and careful on the people you even consider the thought anything with, because if you can't allow me to experience this same level of spirituality and sacredness, then I don't want any parts of it. But like you said, Brian, we can have those conversations before we even hit the bedroom. Go ahead and talk about that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. But because, like you said, we're shut down to have these conversations. Really, a lot of people, are told in the church, like, you don't even date. You're not left alone. You don't have these alone conversations. If you talk about it, you're going to it. And the thing is that we have to have these conversations, about sex and sexuality, or get, decide to commit, because it's a huge part of our relationship. Yeah, I that we need to become friends first.
Yes.
I believe we need each other first. I believe we need to, can we get along? Do we like each other?
Yeah.
But I also agree that sex and sexuality is a huge part of it. It's who we are. When a person, I'm gonna tell when a person is well sexed and well loved around a different walk, because it affects being.
Yeah.
That's, created that in us.
Yeah.
Created in the image
and the likeness of God. Yes.
We're created
Yes.
to love. We're created for pleasure.
Wow.
That's how we create it.
Yeah.
So to mute that, to diminish that, is to diminish God.
Wow, that's powerful.
And that understanding, like what the sacredness of sex is. Sacred, sometimes people in the church assume that it becomes sacred because of its context. In other words, it's sacred because a married man and woman are having sex. And it's not sacred outside of that. But a married man and woman can have sex, and it's not sacred.
I know that's right.
Yeah.
It's not sacred, and you want to keep it a secret.
And if a man doesn't understand, for example, or a woman doesn't understand, when a man is entering a woman's body, that's the only circumstance under which he is literally entering another human being.
Wow.
I mean, that's a profound.
That is profound.
A profound concept. Like women are, that they actually have human beings that are growing in their bodies.
Right.
But men, that's the first time and the only time when they're actually entering another person. And that's a sacred moment, because if you recognize your spouse as being created as in the image of God, and so therefore being God in that sense, it's like you're entering into a divine place. We talk about not desecrating the church, and coming into the church with a certain reverence. Well, it's entering a woman's body, your wife's body, with a reverence.
Yes.
And you have to understand that first for it to even be sacred, for you to there even be a sacredness around it.
Right.
Here's the wonderful thing about what you just said, and it's so powerful. And here's for everyone that's listening, I want you to like and share. I see the numbers, and I thank you for that. Please make sure you continue to like and share. What people have to understand, and we were taught this, but at the end of our pores are nadis, which are called receptors. And so even when things are spoken, seen, or unseen, we're always receiving energy. We're always receiving information. Just imagine you wanting to, be sacred and secret, but having a relationship with someone that has all of this negative, dark, shadowing energy. Then you're receiving that, especially when you are in this orgasmic state. Your alpha beta waves are open, your pores are opening up, everything is open. You're receiving all of this spiritual channeling, all of this spiritual DNA and information. And that, ladies and gentlemen, can either be up to your benefit or to your detriment. So it is important that we as the church talk about this, and we begin to talk about it from a healing standpoint, in which we're doing now. If you're clutching your pearls right now, if you're afraid of this conversation, then it shouldn't be shame on Vayne Thomas, shame on Karen, shame on Brian. You should be asking your pastor, your teacher, your evangelist, your prophet, your apostle, why have we not had this conversation? Why do I not know about this outside? Why do I have to go outside of the church to get perverted, to get misinformed, when this information should be in the church? Now, here's the thing, and I want to read something that I think we all were commenting the other day on something that Davey said, because we've seen a lot of scandal also in the Tantra world, to where, some of the teachers were supposed to be responsible and they were doing other things or whatever. But there was something that I read. It said, if you're having sex with one random or incompatible partner after another, you can pick up lots of this kind of subtle pollution. And there's risk your channels will get blocked. So the church said it, and the church had, the church is very keen on tapping into the essence of God or the Spirit of God and catching something. But I think not only do we need to catch it, but we've got to research it so we can find out, well, what's behind what I just caught? Because there's something to it. So when we are intimate with a person that is polluted and our channels are open, we become polluted. We become traumatized. We become hurt. There are things that will just come up in us sporadically, spontaneously, that we do not understand. And we'll be saying, why am I walking around feeling like this? Why am I walking around dealing with this? Why am I growing through this? Why am I experiencing this? It's because of what I chose to lay down with, and who I chose to lay down with was not doing their work. But if they're not doing their work, it's not solely their fault. We all need to be doing the work together. Okay, so I've got a few more things. Number one question that I want to ask is, what is the benefit? Well, I think we just said that. The church has to be the university for hard topics. Can we talk about that? And when we talk about that, let's talk about, because I know for myself, when I learned this creative power, when I learned how to make, not everything in my life is sacred. Everything is holy. Everything I do is as unto the Lord, as the scripture says. When I look at my wife, I'm looking at her with holy eyes. Now, we have our tip taps and, we have our little whatever, but we hadn't had a full argument in 4 or 5 years. The last time we had one, it was crazy. F-bombs was going everywhere. I mean, and I didn't even know that was in me. I've been in church all my life. I guess I was listening to some of the church folks' meetings in the back room, and I heard a few curse words and took them home with me and saved them for later. But they were all there were all type of things that were coming up. And from then we have little spurts, but there's no this. It's, well, let's talk about this. Let's discuss this. But we've seen growth in every area of our lives financially. People ask me all the time, how did you go from Hurricane Harvey? You lost everything, and now you're in a condo in Dallas, and you're living like this. Listen, I use these principles, and people miss out on the benefit. Why should the church be the university for hard topics? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if we are created, by a creator, by source, then
bring him to me. Let me hug him real quick. Go ahead, keep talking.
Aw, how old is he?
He is 3. And he just wants some attention. But go ahead. Yeah. If we're made.
Yeah. So I mean, we need to be in a space where we can go to institutions, people that we trust, to bring this information. But if the church is repressed, meaning not teaching what the human body,
come here, baby,
how we're actually designed, how we're created,
look,
how
we're
we're
on
created
TV.
for pleasure. A lot of people don't realize that in the womb, both male and female babies are the same for the first trimester.
Yes.
Their reproductive organs don't become different until like the 6th month or until the 4th month. So because of that, it's fascinating when you just look at pictures and see that the penis and the clitoris look the same.
Yes.
They're very, very similar structures. And what Brian was talking about, what people think of as the clitoris, which is, just that little eraser, size piece, that's really called the glands of the clitoris. So that's like the head of a man's penis, the glands of the man's penis. So it's all very similar, but you can't please your wife. You can't be fully pleased yourself if you don't know those things, if you don't know those parts. So the church needs to be teaching it. The church needs to be teaching, for example, how doing pelvic floor work, so that a woman's reproductive system is healthy. That's getting, the blood supply and all of that. And the same with a man. So they're just some basic things that the church should be teaching, which doesn't even get to like the spiritual aspect of
Right,
it,
right.
and what I was talking about, the sacred aspect of it. So it's the responsibility of the church to its people to make sure that they're getting that information and getting accurate information.
Yeah.
So, Brian, why should the church be the university for hard topics? Go ahead.
Well, the church, as we know, is us. We're the church.
Right.
We're the temple.
Yes.
That's just an our representation of
Yes.
who we are. But even when the temple was being built, the temple was being built in the Old Testament, God said, I want skilled labor.
Yeah.
He went and got skilled labor. He didn't ask where the religious background was. He didn't ask, where they say, he didn't ask, are you skilled in this? So the problem is that the church is formed a separation from people that have the tools to get the tools to bring to the church, to heal the church, to build this divine temple.
Yes.
So we're walking around broken, almost like those old V8 commercials, kind of about a theme, because we don't have everything we need for our structure to be standing upright,
right,
to be empowered. So what you're doing is amazing, because you're in a church, you're a preacher, and you've gone and got tools, and this is what you're doing. So yeah, you're going to get the stones thrown at you, and you're going to get people saying, this is blasphemy. You're going to get that, but you're doing something. You're operating out of love. You're operating out of love and not fear. Yeah. So because you're operating out of love and you want to see the church, the body, healed and grow, you're bringing the tools to the church. That's why we're here. So that's to be just, honored, and I honor you for that, for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much.
So that's really what it comes down to, is really bringing the tools to the church so we can become everyone, not just the church, not just people, everyone can become healed. And that's supposed to be a place where we go for healing.
Yes.
But when it comes to sexual healing, no, you don't come here.
Oh, no.
Where do you get it? It's literally nowhere to get it. You can't go to porn. You can't ask your parents. You can't do this. You can't do that. So basically, you're sitting here and you're just like, you're suffering through life, suffering through your sexuality, suffering through, the pain in your trauma without having the tools to heal.
That's so powerful. And I someone just said, they said that, the church doesn't want to lose money. I believe that if the church had these sessions, and if the church were to really talk about this in depth and have classes and have a university where it's paid for, then they wouldn't lose money, but they would gain people, because people know where to come to get the information. I believe that the church needs to be the university for hard topics, because we are losing people as the church. People don't, even though they quote the scripture that we are the church, people really see buildings as the church. So let me bring it home to those persons. We are losing churches by the droves. People are not going to churches anymore because they feel unproductive. They feel as if they're being unfulfilled. They feel as if they're not getting their needs met. They feel as if no one is speaking to where they are. This is where the church is going. And I'm so grateful that the divines allowed me to see where the church is going, because the church is no longer wanting to just get by, but it wants to get through. Doesn't just want to get over stuff or get through stuff. It wants to get over it and get through it. And so this is where the church is going. And the church needs to have these conversations so that people can now see God on another light. God is not ignorant. God is not dumb. God is not misinformed. God is the creator of the universe, which created sex, created wealth, created nonviolent, created wonderful communication, created interpersonal skills. These things need to be taught in the church. And let me tell you, I'm doing it as a preacher. I'm teaching this wherever I go. I'm teaching it in Dallas. I'm teaching it in Waco. I'm teaching it in Atlanta. I'm teaching this because this is where the church is going. And I just believe that if pastors, prophets, evangelists, teachers, those persons in which I know love God, if we don't catch a hold of some information, then we will lose people by the droves. And we really don't want to lose people, because people are precious to us and they're precious to God. And when we begin to enlighten people, then what will happen? Now, here's the thing. Here's the wonderful thing about a pastor. If a person outgrows your church, that means you've done a great job. Because you've expressed all that you had in you to express. And now it's time for them to go on a journey somewhere else. And so
Absolutely.
as we continue to do this, I think the next conversation that we will have is, why is the church so divorced? Because you all have a wonderful testimony, and we'll talk about that a little later. But we are people, I want you to understand, as you like and share, the church needs to have this conversation so that people can see who God really is. People don't know who God is because we aren't showing how excellent God is, how powerful, how knowledgeable, how great, how infinite, how expansive, how conscious, how woke God is. And once we show that through our application and experience, then what happens is that we begin to win people to God. Now, will they come to your church? They may not. Will they dress like you? They may not. Will they know all the hymns? They may not. Will they do what you do? They may not. But they'll see God, and they'll see God through you. Do we have any closing remarks? You all? Brian, Karen?
No, we're excited to, like I said, to connect with you, and we're here if you need us to help, I guess, spread the message.
Yeah.
And to bring this medicine, bring this healing.
Yes.
I
Loving
mean,
God's
God
way.
is a God of healing.
Yes.
That's why Jesus came, was to heal.
Yes.
Yeah, and if anyone wants coaching, wants to come to retreats, we do have retreats, and we teach these tools to individuals, where they are. Just go to exploretantra.com. It's our website.
Yeah, go explore that.
Coaching, our retreats, and we'd love to work with people to help them get to that level, to enhance who they are, not just sexually, because when you, like I said, remove that blockage, your whole life starts to flourish. So we're
your whole life,
to be here and thank you for the song.
I mean, I reached out to you, Vayne, so thank you so much for having us on and for your mission and, what you're doing to bring this information to the church and to people who really are suffering and who need all of this.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Gratitude to you.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Those of you who are on this, we're about to end this session, but please like and share. The other video is up from 2 weeks ago. It's got about 1,000 people that have watched it. Please continue to like and share this. Go to that website again. Please give them your website again.
exploretantra.com.
exploretantra.com. Go there and be on the lookout for our page and our working together. I'm working on something entitled Love God's Way. So we're going to have workshops and going to have a website available for you very shortly. So make sure you like and share. Remember, this is Vayne Thomas and this is Karen and Brian. We're signing out. Your apostolic and prophetic voice. Be challenged, be charged, be changed. I love you. He does too. He's crying right now. Love you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.